What's up everybody? My name is Ryan and you're watching Garage Gym DIY. And in this video, we're going to take on one of the biggest DIY projects for any garage gym. And we're going to try to take all this stuff here back behind me and we're going to try to turn that into a platform. So a little bit about how this became the project of the day. So I put off putting in a platform up until this point because I kind of like the idea of having everything in the garage floor flat. So that way I could pull my car in when and if I ever wanted to. The fact of the matter is, it's been about almost 6 months now since we started building out the gym here in the garage. And this morning as I'm lifting, I get a text from my wife who is upstairs, clear on the other side of the house, and she could feel the weights hitting the floor because it's literally almost shaking the entire house. And she sent me a text and said, "Are you sure we're not messing the foundation up or anything crazy by what you're doing out there?" And the answer I texted back to her was, probably not. And so I figured probably not. It's probably not a great answer. And so I said, you know what? Let's go ahead and put a platform in here. I'm not pulling the car in anyway, and probably would be a good idea to add an extra layer of protection to the garage floor. So the way a platform is going to help protect the floor is two different ways. So I'm going to have a base layer of OSB board with another layer of the horse stall mat from Tractor Supply Company as a drop zone on top of that. So we're going to add an extra about 1.5 inches worth of thickness. So that extra thickness is going to help obviously absorb more force as the plates hit the ground. And then two, if you think about when a plate hits the ground, the whole bar, the whole plate isn't hitting the ground. Just the very edge of the plate that's actually hitting the ground is where all of that force is going into your floors, into your garage floor. And so a platform is going to hopefully also help distribute that force a little bit. So when those plates hit the drop zones in the platform, it doesn't necessarily just drive right into that same spot every single time. The platform should help distribute that force a little more evenly. And hopefully that'll help kind of protect the garage floor, also help protect the foundation and all the other stuff with the house. So a little bit about the materials and kind of what I've got and kind of the plan here to kind of get this thing put together. So what I've got is I've got some OSB board. So picked everything up at Lowe's. I got 4x8 OSB boards. So OSB stands for Oriented Strand Board. Okay, and I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert on OSB boards or plywood, but essentially it's very similar to plywood. It's a little heavier than plywood. It's a little cheaper than plywood. And the consistency and the denseness is a little bit better than plywood. So hopefully we don't end up with kind of any dead zones. It should be a consistent denseness throughout. And the fact that it's cheaper, awesome. So the OSB boards were $22 a piece. For those, like I said, 4x8s, but the platform that I'm wanting to create, so the easy thing to do would be able to take those 4x8s and end up building an 8x8 platform. That's a little bit bigger than really I want. It's a little bit bigger than what I really need. I'm not planning on putting a squat rack on top of the platform. And so I'm going to go with a 6x8, all right, 8 feet wide, 6 feet deep is the platform that I'm going to attempt to build today. And so what I did is I just had them cut it right in Lowe's. Okay, so it takes one step right out of the process immediately. And so I kept one of the 4x8 boards the same. And then I took another 4x8 board, cut it down the middle, and basically made two 2x8s. So I'm going to take one of those 2x8s and basically sit it next to the 4x8, so that'll be the first base layer. And then perpendicular to those two boards, I then took two of the other 4x8s and basically made them 6x4s. And they're going to have one 6x4 here, one 6x4 here, and that'll be basically the base layer. Then I've got a piece of pine that's 3/4 inch. It was also a 4x8 and had them cut 2 feet off of that to make it a 4x6. So that'll actually be the platform piece that'll go in the middle of the platform. And then I'm going to take one of my extra Tractor Supply horse stall mats. I'm going to cut that down the middle. Those come in 4x6s. I'm going to take that, cut it down the middle, and make two 2x6s. And then those 2x6s will end up being the drop zones for the platform itself. And then before we get into it, to the actual building process, a little bit on price. So the OSB boards, $22 a piece. The piece of pine was $45. Picked up some extra 3/4 inch screws for the base layer, and then we'll also use some 1 1/4 inch screws once we get the horse stall mats and the pine on top. So another cool thing that you can do right from Lowe's is I ended up renting a pickup truck from Lowe's. Cost me 20 bucks. Was able to take all the boards, all the materials, throw it in the back of the Lowe's rental truck, bring it to the house, drop it off, take it back. That cost me 20 bucks, well worth $20 to not have to try to strap it to the top of one of our cars or anything crazy like that. So total cost between the OSBs, between the piece of pine, and even including the rental truck, I'm looking at about 160 bucks, also including the screws as well. So let's jump into it, let's get started. Okay, so you probably can't see me on here, but I'm trying to just kind of talk through as I'm going here. So this is my 4x8 board that I didn't have cut at all. So I'm gonna lay that board down first. I'm gonna give myself a little bit of room from the wall. Right, that way I can set a plate if I want to outside of the platform itself, off to the side. And so my cord can also run down along the wall. So the next thing, so this is my 2x8. That's going up to the top. Essentially, I'm just going to line those up side by side right here. So now I've got my 4x8 and my 2x8. So that's going to be the bottom layer of my 6x8 platform. Just going to try to get these lined up as good as I can. Okay, that looks pretty straight. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 4x8 and I'm going to lay these two perpendicular to the bottom layer. So one on one side here. And sitting the other over there. So now it's just a matter of getting these lined up. All right, super even on the edges. Okay, so now we have our base layer set up. We're just going to screw them together. So I've got some 3/4 inch screws. I got my power drill here. Really, honestly, the more screws, the better. I'm going to hit all 4 corners of these two 4x6s, and then probably put an extra one in the middle on both sides, just to hold these 2 layers together. Pretty happy with the base now. So now I'm going to lay the plywood, or excuse me, the pine board down for the platform in the middle, get that in place, and then we'll go to getting the horse stall mat, cutting that in half. I'm looking forward to that the least. I know from making a few cuts on those things, that's going to absolutely probably be the hardest part of the process. So let's get the pine board down. Let's get the mats. Let's get that thing cut in half. Get that in place, and this thing should be ready to go. So I'm just going to measure the size real quick. Should have 2 feet. I think I just about nailed it. Should have 2 feet on each side for the drop zones. And I think that's just about perfect right where it's at. Okay, so I moved the pine board out of the way just for a moment. I took one of the extra 2 pieces of the OSB board, so that way as I'm cutting this, I'm not cutting into the boards that I'm actually using for my base layer. So I've got my box cutter here, and I'm gonna measure this up, and I'm going to mark this in probably the most meat-headed manner possible. I'm going to just use some chalk. Actually, let me start a little closer. Let me start a little closer to the edge here. I'm just going to use chalk here to make my marks. Now, if you're watching this and you're cringing because there is 900 better ways to do this than what you're currently watching me do, I'm with you. I can't imagine this is the best way to do this, but like I said at the start, I am not a craftsman, but we're going to make it work. Okay, so we're almost there. Just got done cutting the horse stall mat in half, so now I've got two 2x6s that's going to work as the drop zones. If you want to learn from my mistakes, take your time, cut the mats. It is a tedious process to cut the mat. Change your blade out multiple times if you need to on your box cutter. I also, if I could have done it again, I probably would have made the chalk line one solid line all the way instead of just kind of dotting it out. I kept wanting to kind of veer off just a little bit. I'm really happy with how it turned out. If you're really a perfectionist, just make sure you take your time with your cut. I like things, especially when it comes to the garage gym. I like things looking a little bit raw and rugged, so I love how it turned out. So the last piece is I've got some 1.5-inch screws that I'm going to go around, screw the pine board down, screw the horse stall mats down. If you wanted to use a heavy-duty glue, you could probably go that route as well. I'm going to go with screws and try those out. Hopefully those end up working out pretty good. I think they will. And then this thing's going to be ready for some cleans and some smashes. So we'll be back with I'll be back with the final product in just a few minutes. Okay, so I gotta admit, I'm pretty fired up with how it turned out. Honestly, super easy. I was actually shocked at how easy this was actually to all put together. Again, started off going to Lowe's, having them cut everything for me was a huge time saver, made everything super easy. Was able to drop the plywood pieces in place, get those screw bolted down, plywood, bam, drop that right on there. The hardest part of the whole thing was cutting the horse stall mat in half. Also, I want to go back, when I was talking about the price, initially the grand total, I kind of got lucky. I already had an extra horse stall mat that I could use. If you needed to buy one of those are usually like 40, 45 bucks at Tractor Supply Company. So that would push the grand total. I said about 160. That would push the grand total to about 200 bucks, and that's including the screws, including the plywood, including the pine board, and then if also including the horse stall mats, and that's also still including renting the truck from Lowe, so another 20 bucks there. So grand total, you're going to look at about $200. That's pretty good for a platform. Now, a couple other pieces I want to touch on real quick before we wrap it up. I have basically an open platform right here. Some platforms that you see, that whether it's a DIY or even if it's a commercial platform, they'll have the metal rim, right, that goes on the outside of it. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of those. I think they cause more issues than they do look good or make the platform perform better in any stretch of the imagination. So I went without that. So mine is just boards on top of boards on top of boards, right? So, so after hit a couple reps, walked inside to the living room on the other side of the house, checked in to see sound and vibration, kind of what the difference was. Jen said she could still hear it, but couldn't feel it. So the vibration of the plates hitting the floor that would vibrate almost basically throughout the entire house, that appears to be solved. So that's pretty awesome, and hopefully that'll help protect the garage floor going forward. And at the end of the day, I've got a super cool platform. I don't know exactly if I'm going to leave the wood just as it is, or do some type of finish on it, or maybe get some type of you can buy the logos that, I don't want to say iron on, that's not right, but kind of like the peel on logos. At some point, may do that, may just kind of leave it as if you notice from my plate storage rack, and obviously my squat rack, I kind of like the just the bare wood, bare steel kind of thing. So hope you guys enjoyed. If you're thinking about building yourself a platform in your gym, based on how easy it was to put this together, took me about 2 hours total, and half of that was probably setting up the camera and talking to the camera. So probably about an hour, you could get all this stuff knocked out. Highly recommend, and I'm already looking forward to getting my first real lift in on this platform. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, that's much appreciated, and then subscribe, and you can see a whole bunch more videos like this, product reviews on stuff that I'm using within my garage gym, and maybe other DIY projects of putting stuff together. So hope you all enjoy.